Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, so the time Jesus refers to as the end of the age. And where we are in this book is a critical place where we are seeing that the 10 kings who are of one accord and of one mind, who have given their authority to the beast, are now turning on the harlot and they're going to burn her with fire. But God has purposed it in their hearts, and there's so much to be learned about the spiritual realm from these few verses. So we're just going to pick it up where we left off, Revelation 17, starting verse 16. And the 10 horns which you saw in the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. Now, we're going to just kind of focus on those verses specifically. Last time we talked about the reason that they make her desolate and naked, the reason they burn the fire. This time we're going to talk about, because there's something that a lot of people just skip over here, and this is very critical. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose until the words of God are fulfilled. Now, before we get into how all this plays out, I just want to remind you, because it's very important we keep track of this, that the dragon has given the beast authority, and the dragon is Satan. If we look at Revelation 12:9, so the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil, and Satan, who deceives the whole world, he was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So the dragon gave the beast its power. And this is a satanic empire. And the 10 kings, they give their kingdom to the beast. Revelation 17:13, these are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. But the peculiar thing about these verses is it specifically says, for God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose. So what is that? Well, how does all that work? Well, let's begin by saying that Satan is and his fallen angels are the sons of disobedience. They are liars. If you look at Ephesians 2:1, and you he made alive, who was dead in the trespass and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air. That's Satan, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience. So this is what we're looking. They've been here forever, from the beginning, and they are trying to establish dominion on this earth and keep it forever and ever. But of course, God has other plans. So just keep those things in mind. So how would God purpose it in their hearts? Like, how does he purpose it in their hearts and minds to do this thing, when Satan is also trying to convince them to do this thing? Well, there's a peculiar passage. This is all over the Old Testament. There's a peculiar passage in Job. And, Job was righteous, really about as righteous as a guy could get, according to God. And then Satan said, well, let me destroy his life and he will curse you. So there was almost like a trial, a test in Job's life. And after this trial was over, he had some friends come visit him, and they tormented him for about 27 chapters. So there's something that his friend Eliphaz says that's very, very peculiar, that shows how do kings purpose themselves to the workings of Satan. Well, if we look at Job 4:12, and this is Eliphaz talking. Now a word was secretly brought to me, and my ear received a whisper of it. In disquieting thoughts from the vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, fear came upon me and trembling, which made all my bones shake. Then a spirit passed before my face. The hair on my body stood up. It stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes. There was silence. Then I heard a voice saying, can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can a man be more pure than his maker? If he puts no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who dwell in houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust, who are crushed before a moth? So what Eliphaz experienced is he had a satanic spirit come and tell him things and convince him to go and torment Job. Because this was a deal between the devil and God. This was a bet, so to say, between the devil and God. And the devil is all out to prove that he is correct in this thing. So, to not think that spirits aren't out talking to people and convincing them to do things, to not think that is happening is foolish, ladies and gentlemen. It's foolish because it's happened back then. Job is the oldest book in the Bible, probably the oldest complete text on the planet. And it happens today, and it'll happen all the way to the very end because the dragon gave the beast his authority. The Antichrist definitely is working with Satan audibly. But there's other ways that God purposes things in people's hearts and shows them and convinces them to do certain things. There's a peculiar verse in 1 Kings 22 where King Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, comes to visit King Ahab, the king of Israel, and Ahab is wicked and evil, and he has beaten and imprisoned and killed all the prophets except for really one. And Jehoshaphat loves God, does everything that God asks him to, and is really, to many degrees, should be a hero to most Christians by his behavior alone. But as he visits him, Ahab is asking him to go to war. But God wants Ahab to go to war because he's going to kill him when he gets there. And there's this peculiar conversation that happens between Jehoshaphat and Ahab where Jehoshaphat says, well, if I'm going to go to war with you, then let's talk to prophets. And Ahab brings all these prophets in, but he says, well, don't you have a prophet of God? So he brings in this one guy that Ahab kind of hates, and pick it up there. 22:16. So the king said to him, how many times shall I make you swear that you tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord? Then he said, I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains as sheep that have no shepherd. And the Lord said, these have no master, let each return to his house in peace. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, did I not tell you that he would not prophesy good concerning me, but evil? Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. Now this is very important. It's always good to see what it is God is doing in the heavenly realm. Anytime you get a glimpse into heaven, I think you should really pay attention to what that might look like. Therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing by on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who will persuade Ahab to go up, that he may fall at Ramoth Gilead? So one spoke in this manner, and another spoke in that manner. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. Then the Lord said to him, in what way? So he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you shall persuade him and also prevail. Go out and do so. This is hard for people to understand because God doesn't lie. He is incapable of lying. But when a spirit offers to lie to get his will done, he will allow it. And you have to see that. So the spirits came down and they told his prophets what they wanted to hear. Ahab agreed, went off to war, and he died there. This is one way that God will purpose it in people's hearts, is he will have spirits whisper what they want to hear in their ears and lead them into things desiring very, very similar to the dream that Pilate's wife had the night before he allowed for the Jews to kill Jesus. This is how this works, ladies and gentlemen. And these 10 kings, there are good and evil spirits speaking to political leaders in this world right now. Always have been, always will, until the end. And it's something that you have to see. There are politicians making deals specifically with the devil. And we've even seen that in the Bible. If we go back to Matthew 4, here the devil is tempting Jesus, and he says this in 8. Again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give to you if you will fall down and worship me. This is how the devil convinces these kings to do these things. But similarly, God uses that evil for his purpose. It's really kind of a beautiful thing. But the more you see and the more you can open your eyes to the spiritual realm, because there are politicians and kings that have not only opened their eyes to them, but they've opened their ears to them as well. Love to hear any thoughts and insight on that. Put in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support this channel to Patreon, that link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.